Let's bring in NewsNation contributor Kurt Bardella to kind of break this down a little bit more. Kurt, great to see you. I'd like to start with that letter to House Democrats from President Biden. What is your reaction to that?
I mean, it's kind of a regurgitation of what we've heard the president say over the last few days at various events, rallies, on conference calls. And, I mean, it's a marker that he's clearly establishing. I think that right now their strategy is to try to get as many members of the Democratic caucus who might be thinking about speaking up publicly to at least wait, to just try to buy time. I think that's really what we're seeing from the president and his allies right now, is an effort to buy time, to give him the runway to dispel some of the concerns that that debate performance created. I'm not so sure that's going to work because, as you alluded to, and as Joe alluded to in his reporting, a lot of these members have been getting it now all weekend long from their constituents, from their supporters, from their donors, who are almost all in unison saying a change should be made right now while we still have time to make it, to stave off that worst case scenario of losing really the House, the Senate, and the White House to Donald Trump and his allies.
All right. So, Kurt, that letter we know today going to House Democrats. But on the other side of Congress, Senator Fetterman, he is speaking out. Let's listen to some of what he had to say about that debate performance.
I do agree with Joe Biden that he is going to be the right guy in this cycle. And yeah, he didn't have a great debate. He says that. I didn't have a great debate back in 2022. I know you can pull up a lot of great hits out of mine. but I'm here right now and I'm defending him. And I spent the whole day with the president. He was Joe, perfect Joe that day. And I'm really happy to report that.
All right. So Senator Fetterman calling him perfect Joe. This is kind of a two-parter, Kurt. I mean, does the senator have a point? And then, considering all of the money that is involved, is there really any way that Biden is not the nominee?
Well, I certainly think that the senator has a point. He's speaking from personal experience. We all remember him having challenges on the campaign trail and some health concerns during his election, and he ended up resoundingly, defeating Mehmet Oz in Pennsylvania. So he knows a little bit about what he's talking about there when he says, "Don't overreact to an off day, an off night." That happens in politics. I think the thing that he underestimates is that the real looming question is this wasn't just a one-off. The guy's 82 years old. He's president of the United States. It's the most stressful job in the world. We see every presidency, how they age, having that job. People come in with no gray hair, they leave with gray hair. It's a stressful job. Joe Biden is not a, quote, young 82. He's a pretty old 82 because he's had this job for 3.5 years, and that's okay. That's human. I think that a lot of the people who are right now questioning the president would feel better if they would just concede some of that, admit to what we're all seeing with our eyes, and just go with the message that, yeah, I had a bad night and I have some bad days. I'm 82 years old. That's normal. That's human. But at my worst, I'm still better than Donald Trump at his best. And that's why you should stick with me. And just real quick on that money question, the only person who could viably put together the campaign if Biden were to step aside is Kamala Harris, because a lot of that money that Biden-Harris has raised would default to her.
Yeah. So just clarify, the president is 81. He will be 82, though, on his next birthday in November. But, Kurt, do you think his one-on-one interview Friday, did that help him? Did it hurt him? Did it really have no impact? What are your thoughts?
I don't think it changed anybody's mind. I don't think it hurt him per se, but I just don't think it moved the needle. It's going to take a lot more than just a sit-down interview, pre-taped, 15, 20 minutes with George Stephanopoulos to, I think, reassure those who are concerned right now. It's going to take a steady stream of consistent performances, live, in person, answering questions, extemporaneous performance. I think that's what people really want to see. Everybody, I think, agrees Joe Biden can follow a script. He can read a teleprompter. He can handle himself well in very choreographed situations. I think what people are looking for, though, for that reassurance is, how does he do when it's not scripted? How does he do when there isn't a format? Can he go back and forth and show the mental acuity needed to have those extemporaneous moments and perform well?
My last question for you, I mean, in the video that we just looked at there, we are seeing Jill Biden, his wife, in front of the cameras prominently. She is on the campaign trail. She's on the campaign trail today. Kurt, do you think that's making any positive difference?
Well, one thing that we've known throughout the entire Biden presidency is that Dr. Biden is actually a very popular figure, more popular, frankly, than her husband. So having her out there on the campaign trail is a smart thing for the Biden team to be doing because she does connect well with voters, especially with women voters. And again, women's issues have been one of the major issues in the campaign. Certainly, it's the sweet spot for Democrats politically. It's one of the only areas in which Republicans are really underwater in public opinion. When you look at immigration, the economy, they've had the advantage, but on abortion, women's health, women's choice, that's been a strong area for Democrats. So it's not surprising to see Dr. Biden out there more. And in part, I think people look at her as one of the few people who has that influence over the president. So if she's going to stand by her man, if you will, and be that forceful, that's meant to send a reassuring gesture to those who are concerned about the president.
Yeah, well, we will certainly see what happens. Great speaking with you again, Kurt Bardella. Thank you so much for your time.
Thanks for having me on.
We are